Hello everyone. This is going to be your Phase 1 Mythic Tindral guide. I'm going to break the full Tindral breakdown into 3 different videos because each phase in its own right is basically an entire encounter. So let's talk about the Phase 1 Mythic differences. Feathers are going to be spawning throughout the fight, and people who run over those feathers are going to be allowed to dragon ride and fly up in the air. Why that's important is that there will be 3 meteors that spawn in the sky, and players that do grab the feathers and dragon ride must fly into the meteors within a certain amount of time, or else they explode and wipe the raid. The next change is that you cannot pre-immune or immune any of the roots, because if you do, you will instead spawn a treant that pulses AoE on the raid. There are times in the fight where we will be committing immunities, but for the most part, please do not one-off immune the roots, because we'd rather just kill the roots than to get the treants to spawn. And then lastly, the dispels have to be staggered on Mythic. Once a dispel goes off, it leaves a vulnerability on the raid for a few seconds, and if another dispel goes off while that vulnerability is on the raid, it is an instant wipe. So let's go on to the fight. So for positioning, and I guess before I start here, we should think about this boss for progress as opposed, instead of thinking about going phase by phase, we really should take progress in like 20-second increments. So we do a set of mechanics that lasts about 20 seconds. If we can live through those, that's progress, right? So we should take everything as about 20-second increments here when we start pulling this boss. And as I go through this guide, you'll recognize that there's basically going to be 2 targeted groups that are going to be doing different things at different points in the fight, and that's going to be separated by essentially melee versus ranged. And you'll see an icon in the lower left corner when it's kind of addressing your group of what you're supposed to be doing. So let's start. We're going to pull the boss. There's going to be no lust here. We're going to be doing that in P2. So no lust here. We're going to pull the boss over to Skull. Ranged and ranged healers can actually pre-position over towards Skull, so they don't have to move as much, but a majority of the raid is going to be on Skull, because we're going to be baiting the first flame circles, or the flame fire beams on Skull. And that comes about, I think, 20-ish, 15 seconds into the fight. Those are going to come out. Remember, there's 2 big circles that come out. Once you see that, melee, everyone who's stacking on Skull, we're going to go ahead and run on over to Square. As soon as we run over to Square, we're going to go ahead and kick off the first set of mechanics. So there's going to be a lot of stuff going on at the same time. There's going to be the ranged group doing their thing and the melee group doing their thing at the exact same time, but I'm going to separate the slides to directly talk to one group at a time. So I'm going to talk about the ranged DPS and ranged healers here first. Essentially what we want to do is line up in a stack of 4 with the dispels. So you'll notice here, you'll follow your weak aura, and there will be a weak aura that basically assigns you 1 through 4, and that's going to be your position of your dispel. And the ranged healer, who always gets one, will be the first dispel every time. And we're going to dispel clockwise. So if you watch the animation here, you can see healer's going to get dispelled, and they're going to run in. We wait for the vulnerability to disappear. Second one gets dispelled, they run in. And third, and fourth. Now, during the 3rd and 4th dispel, we're actually going to be getting roots at the same time. So there's going to be some freedoms that are assigned for 3 and 4 to make sure that they don't get rooted in the dispel and die. We don't want that. There's also going to be externals assigned to the 3rd and 4th dispel, because again, they're just holding onto that dispel, which is just taking dot damage the entire time, so it hurts, right? So big heals, externals on person number 3 and 4 to make sure they stay alive before the dispels go off. And again, the 4th person goes in. And when you get dispelled, you basically are going underneath the boss to get ready for roots. And the roots are going to happen. Basically, everyone wants to tightly stack around or underneath the boss. You can do stacks of 2, 3, 4 people, but try not to be in more than 4 circles at a time. Don't pixel stack. It obviously does more damage the more circles you're in. And the flight team that I'm going to talk about next, they get to completely ignore the roots when it's their turn to go fly. So as I mentioned before, ranged dispel number 3 and 4 is going to get a freedom to make sure that they just don't get rooted out there in Narnia. So that's the ranged part of this phase. So let's talk about the melee portion. And the melee portion is going to be happening at the exact same time as the dispels and the roots. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So what happens here is 6 feathers are going to pop on the ground, and I'm going to basically assign it here. I'm going to say that the first feather is the closest one to the first dispel in ranged here, right? So if the healer was the first one to get dispelled, the first feather is going to be the closest one to that. So this is how we're going to do it. Just go 1, 2, 3, 4. We're only assigning 3, however, because there's going to be 3 bombs. And this is going to be pre-assigned. I haven't completely determined who is going to go at what point in the fight, but you do need 2 teams of 3, and they need to alternate because you can't go twice in a row. So the first team of 3 is going to go ahead and go into their spots where the feather is spawning, and it's going to allow them to mount up. And again, these 3 people are going to be pre-assigned, and then these 3 people are then going to go to a pre-assigned meteor in the sky. So in this instance, I think I have 1 going west, 2 going east, and 3 going north. And you'll fly up. And this is during the dispels and during roots, right? So all of this stuff is happening at the same time. You 3 are going to get your meteor. You're going to turn around, head towards the roots, and you're going to dive bomb back onto the roots. And that's how a majority of our damage is going to be done to the roots in this fight. And when you hit it, it's going to blow things up, which is great. That's what we want. So nuke them. All right, so that is the first set of mechanics that we have to deal with. And we basically got to rinse and repeat that like 1.5 more times in P1. So after the roots get blown up here, we're going to all stand and kind of bait the next fire beam on square. And again, when that happens, we're going to go ahead and run all the way over to moon here. And we get another set of roots. This is basically just a set of roots, and the fire beams are going off at the same time. So ideally what we want to do here, because there's going to be things coming at us, if we don't stand in a good spot where beams are coming, you're going to get rooted and you're going to die. So what we kind of want to do here is we want to commit all freedoms, immunities, defensives to basically not die from the fire beams and not get rooted. And what that will do is spawn a ton of treants and do a ton of damage to the raid. But if we're committing immunities and defensives, we can deal with that, right? So as that's happening, the ranged teams, basically all ranged, are going to position for the next set of mechanics that we're going to deal with. So basically all of the ranged healers stack on kind of this spot here, and all of the ranged kind of stack loosely back over here. And then once you get assigned your dispel position, so 1, 2, 3, 4, again, we're going clockwise, you will go to your correct position. And basically this is a rinse and repeat of the first set of mechanics that we had that we dealt with like 20 seconds ago. And we're dealing with it in the exact same way. So at this point, treants are still probably getting cleaved down and dying, but the dispels do need to go out. Again, we're going to have the healer dispel. We're going to have the second dispel, third dispel, and 4th dispel. Same thing here. We're going to have pre-assigned externals for numbers 3 and 4, and some freedoms for number 3 and 4 as well. And again, we're all going to go stack up close to the boss. I think I had this slide twice. We're going to all go back underneath the boss and bait the next set of roots again. And during this time, as roots are going out, we're going to have the second flight team go ahead and go. So again, it's going to look something like this. If we do the same thing that we did before with the first feather being the closest to the first dispel, it's going to look 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. Again, we only need 3 because there's going to be 3 bombs and 3 people assigned going up. So the 3 melee are going to need to grab their pre-assigned spots, go ahead and mount up and go to their pre-assigned positions here. Again, what number goes to what isn't terribly important right now. This is going to be pre-assigned to every specific person. So for example, if Skeeth is always going to get feather number 2 and always go north on the second set in P1, he knows that, right? I'm not going to talk about that in this video. That's just an example, right? And again, they're going to go ahead and get their meteors, and they're going to fly back down while all the roots are out, and they're going to blow those things up. All right, so we're going to nuke all the roots. This set needs to die actually pretty quickly because right after all of this happens, we're going to get the last fire beam and last mechanic in P1. So this is kind of like a little mini DPS race to make sure we get all of those roots dead before the fire beams go off. So roots are all dying, fire beam is starting to come out. We're baiting it on Moon, and we all go ahead and take the gate to get to a safe spot to finish P1 off. So we are out there and we see all the fire beams. We dodge the fire beams, we grab our feathers, and we head over to P2, which will come in the next video. So a lot of movement, a lot of very specifically assigned things in P1. A lot of things will be handled by weak auras as long as I set them up right. And yeah, good luck. Let's get through P1 quick.